Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Fastball Show, brought to you by JohnPielli.com, as well as St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey. Today is the first day of March 2018. We'll be on with you till about 7 o'clock today. Lots of stuff we're going to get into. Very happy to be joined by a man who has made such great contributions to the world of sports. He's been a columnist and a writer for well over 50 years. And that's Jerry Izenberg. Jerry, it's John Pielli over in New Jersey. I appreciate you having a couple minutes. Hey, Jerry, if you can, the first question I always like to ask, and I'm kind of a person that loves my history and kind of uses history as a way to kind of go back in a time machine to, talk about different settings and different things that are going on in the world. As far back as you could remember, is there one specific sporting event that you remember going on, whether it was something you covered or you just remember happening?
Well, no. I've been doing this for 69 years, and the chances are the events you're familiar with, I've covered every one of them. So I can't focus on that. I can focus when I was a little kid. My old man had been a professional baseball player, and he kicked around the minors for maybe 5 or 6 years. So baseball was always a thing in our house. And I remember being 7 years old and going to see the Newark Bears in Newark, New Jersey. They were the many Bears. They were the real Bears. They were the top farm team of the Yankees. And the year I saw my first game, they won the pennant in 1937. They won the pennant by 25 and a half games. And everybody on that team went up to the major leagues except one guy. And that's how good the Yankees were, because they never worked for Charlie Keller. They brought him up the next year. But it was a joy. I learned at a very early age how to sneak into the ballpark. And so I missed, as I got older, I arranged to miss a lot of school from back to starting school, spending it at the ballpark. And it was just great. And I got to know the Bears, and they lived in a Riviera Hotel in Newark, and we stood outside every day when we could, certainly on weekends, waiting for them to come out. They walked to a place called Christian's Shop House, which is a restaurant where the team had given them meal times. And so we'd wait and look in the window, and we'd walk back to the hotel with them. And it was a different time, and they had a little bit more time for us than obviously they have for kids. They didn't do commercials. They just played ball and live life, and we had to rapport with the players. And one day I went to the ballpark. I must have been about 9 or 10, and there was another team playing there, the Civil Stadium in Newark, named after the owner of the Yankees. Pardon me. And he was a very progressive owner. The Bears had big league lights before most major league teams had. There was he tried about there. I like him. I'll take him to Yankee Stadium. Anyway, I went there one day, and there was another team that said Newark on their chest and a big E on their hats. And they were the Newark Eagles, and it was an entirely black baseball team from the Negro National League. And boy, I kept going back and said Newark, so what did I care? I was going to root for them. And I saw the ball there. As they came through, I saw Josh Gibson, and so Satchel Paige, and of course the Bears. They had a great third baseman. His name escapes me for a moment. He's terrific.
Ray Dandridge?
He never got to the majors. He played a little minor league baseball. 403 in the Yankees, Johnny Top Club in Minneapolis. They didn't bring him up because he was 42, and he played his last game in the West Coast as a playing manager in Stockton, California, and he was 51 years old, and he hit 327. Those are the kind of players they had in that league.
Yeah, and you were referring to Ray Dandridge, right? Yeah, and I tell you, going at that time, obviously you're talking about baseball, a game that was different than before it became integrated. I'm sure you had the opportunity to see, obviously, some of the players that you mentioned, but certainly some fantastic baseball being played at that time.
Oh, yeah. Well, the rivalries were unbelievably good. And some of those guys they never got there, too. Ironically, when I started getting older enough to understand what's happening, when I
It's outstanding. Once again, joined by longtime journalist Jerry Izenberg. Now, as you move forward and you start covering other sports, I could talk a little bit about, professional football, which obviously existed in a different light. When you were around covering it earlier, right? I mean, football as we look at it now.
Association of American Football League. It's a minor league team. The Chicago Bears own the Newark Bears. The Giants own the Jersey City Giants. The Eagles own the Patterson Panthers. And it was really good football. I mean, those guys, later on when they had more teams, they certainly would have been in the NFL. And I remember the first Giant game I went to. My dad, and he never had anybody. He couldn't put two quarters together. Went over to the polo grounds to see the Giants play the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we're at the top of the polo grounds. And I said, gee, Dad, I can't really see anything. He said, just relax a little. And then by the middle of the first quarter, we walked all the way down to the 50-yard line. My dad gave a buck by the usher that way. He said, there's nobody was in the place. And it's like in New Jersey with the Giants and the Jets.
Of course.
Well, Wellington, so a dear friend of mine, and when he was a kid, the polo grounds, most people don't know, it's not like any other ballpark. They look like they just want to be here and look like a kid, whatever shape. And center field was 420 feet away from the home plate, and that's where the clubhouses were. They weren't under the stands like traditionally they are. So Wellington would sit in the clubhouse before the game, and he, with his binoculars, would look across the East River at Yankee Stadium, where the rival New York Yankees with the American Football League were playing. This got to be like in the late 20s. And one day, he told me, one day he said to his binoculars that turn, he said to his father, hey, Pop, don't worry, don't feel so good. Nobody's in that park either. That was professional football at that time.
Wow, that's outstanding.
And remember, there was really college football in New York. NYU and Fordham each playing each other and going to the Rose Bowl by upsetting the other team at Yankee Stadium. Columbia was good. Columbia, people don't know it. I was good before this. It was before it was born, but I would know that was something little baby. Columbia played in the Rose Bowl and won and beat Stanford. So you had West Point in New York area. You had West Point, you had Columbia, you had NYU, you had Fordham was playing Lombardi playing there. Fordham, he was the best player in Wellington Parish. And he's an interesting guy. Rich was an interesting guy. I got to know him very well because we were out of those days. We didn't have coordinators. We had the backfield coach who was the anything. Maybe I had it coming. He said, no, you didn't. Now we're arguing it. He's on my side and I'm on his side. But now he's Reds.
Now that's outstanding, and I tell you, to have a chance to get to know the coach behind the scenes, and obviously this is one of the more legendary coaches that is being looked upon as the best ever, and have a chance to know him on that level. Is there anything else that you got to know about Vince Lombardi that very few others maybe know? Okay.
Yeah, it's impossible. And so he met with his engineer and they installed wires under the plane surface. And he was going to feel up the guy on, and the man behind the curtain, he was going to push the button. And the wires were going to heat up, and he would not have a chance to freeze and then roll it on for the big plane. Well, the dots caught fire, the wires short circuit. It was a nightmare. And they kept blaming the teams to publish this for it because anytime anything went wrong, you go to check with it and say, well, why did you do this? Why did you do that? So, I mean, they burned their plane field up. It didn't interfere with the game because the ground was still frozen.
Once again, joined by longtime journalist Jerry Izenberg. Now, your focus on boxing as you end up covering it, throughout the years. Of course, you had a chance to, be alongside the great Muhammad Ali. What would you have to say about, what you remember about being alongside Muhammad Ali and his impact on the world of boxing? Yeah, of course.
And I also that's the exact time he died. And then there were the other guys, I was fortunate. The book, my most recent book, Wednesday with Giants, The Golden Age of Heavyweight Boxing. That book, that was a period of heavyweights that was fantastic, So I looked at all of my friends. One of them was a good friend. Fraser was a good friend. Larry Holmes was a particularly good friend. And I knew, at that time, so he was 12. And Floyd Patterson, I knew quite well. And it helps a lot because boxing is a sport where there are only 3 people in the ring, a referee and 2 fighters. And you can anybody who is listening who might have read me would know that I focus on events and people, and I don't know about bats and balls and statistics at all. I try to be your voice and your ear and your vision into who these guys were and what don't forget I've covered every single Super Bowl, and I see a lot of history there.
No, of course, man. And I tell you, you look back at that time, obviously the Super Bowl as we see it now is much different as what the, AFL, NFL championship game was, in the first one that you covered.
Remember the first Super Bowl did not sell out. And the first 6 Super Bowls, I interviewed guys in their hotel rooms. You can't do that. They can hear them. But it made for much better writing back then. And I even there was a guy named E.J. Holland, who was a middle linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs. His nickname was the Beast. And he earned it on merit. He was a terrific ball player. And I actually had lunch with him and the late Jack Murphy, my good friend who was a writer and sports editor for the San Diego paper. We had lunch with him 2 days before the Super Bowl. That's impossible now. So we're sitting in, and I'm asking him, well, for the last paycheck, what do you know? He said, look at this, and he puts his hands down. He said, feel my palms, and they're wet, they're sweating. And it was 1967, I was only 37 then, and I was naive, I guess. And I said, what's happening, coach, now? You're going to prove that you belong with the other league. You beat these guys, and you make a good representation. And he said, no, that's not it. He said, if we win, the winning players get $15,000. That's good money for them today. We get $15,000, and no one has already spent it. So you can do things that you can't do now. not saying those times were better, but the pace in this country was slower, and we had more time to reflect on what was happening in front of us. Today, and this isn't a knock at millennials, but maybe it is, but I see the young people in this business, and they're not interested in anything that happened 10 days ago.
Yeah, and that's such a good point. And I tell you,
I believe I forget, I have to display my ignorance. It might have been Santana, I don't know who it was, but the philosopher who said, those who do the mistakes of history are doomed to repeat them.
Now, I tell you, I actually had a high school teacher that preached that exact point. And I
look at the problems we're having now, and I lived it all in the 30s and 40s. I lived active very with anti-Semitism when I was growing up. I lived the Great Depression. I was born in 1930. Till I came back to the Korean War, I didn't have a lock on the door. Well, it wasn't my door, it was my father's, so I came back and I walked out. But I mean, it was, you learn about life. And I really am grateful for when I was born, because it was hard. I mean, everything was tough. That depression, we have people in this country, except people who live in abject poverty. I'm not calling them, you're poor. But basically, most Americans are way above the level we were in 1930 when I was born. And it teaches you not to wait around and be given something. And your parents react the same way. We went through a period, I don't remember the guy's name, he wrote a book on how to raise a kid. Oh, he got housewives when I put, and it makes your kid proud. Well, my father was the closest man I was ever to in my life, but he never made me a pound. So I got much older and we shared things. That's the way you should be raised. And that helped me a lot in journalism, too.
Now, I tell you, the important thing about what you're talking about, too, it also taught accountability. And you find that, a lot of older people seem to be wiser because of the accountability that they put upon themselves.
He was, I because as a kid, because he'd been a baseball player, a professional baseball player.
Yeah.
So I'm 10 years old, and I'm living in Newark, New Jersey. And he says, go get a pro and sweep the sidewalk. Now, in those days, everybody swept their sidewalk.
Okay.
I mean, that's a pride in your ownership. So I go out there, and I'm sweeping into the gutter, and I see out of the corner of my eye, he's standing about maybe 40 feet away with his arms out. He didn't say a word. So I get it all into the gutter, and I put the thing down, and he says, where you going now? I said, well, sorry, I don't go play ball. He said, no, you're not going to go play ball. I said, but I said, you told me, and he said, you're not going to play ball, you're not done yet. That is the Izenberg Pielli garbage. That is not the Siegel Barracks garbage. It's just how it does for you know where it is. You know where our garbage cans are. I don't care if it's like 30 minutes. Pick it up, put it in our garbage can, and then when you got no idea, you go play baseball. So I looked at him, I don't understand. I said, why? He looked at me, and I don't think he was going to hit me. He only hit me twice my entire life, but and this was not that great of a defense, that great of a defense. He said to me, but I'm going to tell you why. And then, as long as you're living under this roof, that'll be the answer whenever you want to ask me why. And I want to tell you to do something. He said, there used to be a saloon called the White Rose Bar in New York, in the Bowery. And they used to put, like, all the bars used to put hard flag, bread, salami on the bar. And it was a free lunch. And then whatever you bought a beer or whiskey, paid for it. So all of a sudden, no. So I said, people are coming here anyway. Why don't we give them free lunch? So we got down to the White Rose Bar. This is the story he was telling me. It's the last place in New York City for free lunch. The White Rose Bar is closed. Ain't no free lunch in America. Pick up the damn garbage.
Wow.
Later, when I would say something in high school or whatever, he would say, listen, the White House Bar is closed. No free lunch. Go do it.
Yeah, listen, that's a pretty powerful message, and oh wow. Now you look at it, and obviously you had many years to pick up a lot of the skills that you had in the world of journalism. Would you say outside of your father that there was anybody that you kind of looked up to that was in the business?
My father being the first.
Okay.
After my father died, in fact, the year he died, Stanley Woodward, who was my sports editor, he had been a director, he had been a sports editor in New York. He knocked around. He was the greatest editor in that outlet. He wouldn't take any bullshit, and he wouldn't let anybody do any bullshit. He had something to say, he would say it. He wouldn't let the public in the paper say it or anyone like that. Anyway, he was my editor at the Star, and he took me over to the Yankees when he returned to the February 5. And he was very careful with me. I went to my first spring training. The Giants had already moved. And we were very interested in the Giants at the time in New York. So he sent me to spring training with the Giants in Phoenix. And I'm out there about 5 days, and I get a phone call. I want to see you at the game tomorrow. I was there that night. He said, you will be done if you're not in my office the day after tomorrow. So I go, what the hell did I do? So I come in, looks at me, and he says, I'm going to play second base with the Giants. I said, that's an interesting question. There are 7 guys, and any one of them could get decided to ask it out. Basically, was going to play. And then he paused and he said, I'm also going to explain why you're here. I don't give a damn about the picnic desert. I don't give a crap that the worst Dutchman's mine is only 20 miles away from the Giants. You want to be doing spring training. I want to know who's going to play second base. That's what you were out there for. Here's how I fell in love with my own writing, which wasn't that good anyway. And he said, go sit down and figure it out. And I started that this for 3 months. And then one day he said to me, do you like your new assignment? I said, I didn't look at the schedule. I put it up. He said, no, we look at it. It says college basketball in the line. And I said, well, that's pretty good, Stanley. But he said, you don't like it? I'll give it to you. I said, no, I want to do it. But you didn't say what college basketball. He said, we got a lot of teams in New York here. He said, let me tell you something. I hire people because they can do the job. If they can't do the job, I get rid of them. So I'm going to give you a chance. It's your job to find out what games need to be covered. And if you need more people because you need help, there's too many good games you want to, I'll give you help. But in the meantime, you go and you figure it out. And as for me, he said, I got the virility of grown men who play a game wearing short pants and you're not allowed to punch each other. And he made me a writer. And I'll tell you, I learned, he was very hard on me, but I learned much later what it was. He wrote a He had 2 books. The first book was magnificent. Everybody who watched for the journalist because that book was called Sports Page, but he broke that hair and put out a sports page. But in the other book, he was dying of cancer, and I had already left the paperwork back to the late Jerry Izenberg column, and I would go visit him occasionally. And I get elected into the National Sports Sport Writers Hall of Fame. And I get a letter from Ellen Woodward, his daughter, your dad. And she says in the letter, Jerry, I should have told you this so long ago. I didn't think about it. I'm so happy you got elected, and you and Tom are going to be on the same wall. And she said, I never told you this, but I should have told you. Oh, when he was dying, he was in so much pain. I sat on the edge of his bed, and I told him, I talked about the 2 things I knew was most interesting in the world. One was college football, and the other was newspapers. And one thing I said to him, who is the best you ever had? Was it Red Smith? Or was it Joe Palmer, a great racing writer? Or was it, she named them with big people, according to her. And he said to her, I can't answer that question just yet, but I have a feeling that the real answer is going to be Jerry Izenberg. And then he sent me a copy of his book, and he said, he described out a part of it, he said, Jerry Izenberg, the logical successor to Rice, McGee, and Smith. I thought it was really impressed by that. I don't know about him, whatever. I was inducted into all the people that were there. So he came along and sort of student.
Now, once again, joined by longtime sports journalist Jerry Izenberg. I got 3 more questions. I'll try to keep them pretty quick. I do appreciate you having the time. The first one, is kind of the inverse of what I just asked you. You obviously just talked about 3 men that had, great impacts in your life. Obviously, a lot of experience that you've had. I'm sure you've touched the lives of some other people kind of coming through the business. Is there anybody that comes to mind when it comes to somebody you may have mentored?
I'll give you one anecdote. There was a pitcher with the relief pitcher with the Detroit Tigers. I don't remember his name. He had a heart attack. He was a starter. He had a heart attack. And he was at a baseball tournament the whole season. He comes back and he's pitching it out as a relief pitcher. And I got a call on him about the heart attack and how he reacted, whatever else. I get a phone call from the guy who says, "Mr. Izenberg, I can't do you a strange favor." He said, "That's okay." He said, "Jerry, tell me." He said, "No." He said, "My mother had a heart attack. And I read your piece about it. I can't remember his name. I read your piece, and I wish you'd talk to my mother and tell her not to be afraid." Because that's what the guy was, the book was saying. And I said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'll do something better. They'll be in New York the next day in 2 weeks. You come here over 2 hours before the game, and I will put her with the ball player."
Wow.
And that's what we did. And then about a month later, he comes back and says, "Listen, you made a monster. I can never find my mother. Now she's out all hours of the night." So that made me feel good. I did the first column, maybe the only column ever written about the only man to run in a marathon with a heart transplant.
Wow.
There were other things I did like that, right? And I kind of, those things matter to me. The writers, I will thank God. I taught for 2 years at Rutgers, Georgia, and I taught for 2 years at the New School in New York. And I enjoyed the experience. But, and I got a lot out of it, I think. And then I had a summer camp for aspiring journalists. It lasted 8 days, and half of those days I drove out of journalism. I had them starting at 7 in the morning at Pepperstone to teach at Flickman, and then I would teach at all day long, and then I made it as tough as I could for them. I got a semi-pro ball team from Cincinnati to go up and play on the campus of Montgomery State where I held the camp. And they played 2 games a weekend. I would tell the kids, you're the morning writer, you're the afternoon writer, you're the columnist, you're doing a feature, you're in there, you cover the game, you go to talk to the guys, you got, our press boxes, your classroom up on the hill, and you're only going to get 40 minutes, so the longer you take to talk to these guys, the less time you're going to have to write. And they knew I would take the stories out of time for Chairman Hand. And they said, "Oh, we need another minute." I said, "Too late, you're already put the janitor. You missed your deadline." Well, what I did, I told the ball club, I said, "Listen, when these guys come down there, rough them up, you don't have to cooperate with them. They like wickets, like clients get treated." So one guy spit out like somebody's shoes. They're standing at the top of the dugout. I said, "It's up to you. You now have only 25 minutes to write the story. You're going to get down here and do. Are you more afraid of them or me?" Turned out they were more afraid of me. And that was a very good 14 guys in the business.
Wow. Now, I tell you, and if I'm not mistaken, the pitcher you were referring to was John Hiller, right? From the Tigers?
No.
No?
No, it sounded like a Latino name.
All right. Because I'm trying to think. I got. Okay.
I want to say Rocho or someone like that. I just don't remember his name. But that's the guy. And he was so kind and his whole story. It's one of the kind of things in that man. He's 40 years old. You never know. You say you're right. It's a one-way street. You don't know. I find out when they don't like it. I got over 5,000 writers on it. They don't get LA and none of them agree with me. But the
Wow.
My father was pure sweet. So when he walked, of course, he started when he was 8 years old. And when I got married, his wedding gift to me was an American flag. And I really appreciated this guy. He told me a story. I must have heard it 1,000 times. He comes to the country the first day he's here in the tournament school in Patterson, New Jersey. Can't speak a word of English. Now it's recess, so they go across the street to the park, and they don't have enough guys for a baseball game. And somebody on one team says, ask the greenhorn if he wants to play. Well, my father couldn't speak that English, but he showed him the bat, he showed him the people in the field. So my father got the idea to put up 2 fingers and you hit a bat second. My father hit the first base, he didn't look very hard. He hit the first base hit to him, and it went out of the park. And of course, the first part of it hasn't come down yet, but he said, you know something? My father took out American citizenship papers. I enlisted in the Army in 1970, the first day of the war. I was holding in France, but the day I became an American was the day I hit that baseball.
Wow. Yeah, once again, joined by legendary journalist Jerry Izenberg. One of the more controversial people in the world of media was certainly Howard Cosell. And you had the opportunity to engage and be, do different types of stories with him and about him. What would you have? Yeah.
And Howard was a bully. He couldn't bully me, but he was a bully.
Okay.
And I saw a lot of things in him I didn't like. As far as radio, he started out radio,
Yeah.
And he walked around the big white recorder and everybody would always plug at him, but he plugged it in the wall and box out the basketball radio meeting. But he was very good and he was fearless. And later on, he became a caricature of himself. He began to believe things he was saying about himself. But he was a pioneer in terms of broadcast journalism.
No, Lucy absolutely was. Now you've had a chance to write 13 books. You're about to write number 14. If you can, tell the listeners a little bit about your next book.
But the fact is, Jackie went to a game where last time you got rid of everybody who didn't want him on the team. And so he had his teammates take back him up that year. He went to a lot of hell. But the following year, the National League owners said, well, those guys can play. Let's get a couple of them. Not too many, but let's get a couple of them. Larry went to the American League. He was second. He went 6 months after, or 3 months after Jackie Robinson.
Yeah.
And they didn't go get blacks the following year. And he, 3 years after he was in the league, our Denver was thrown behind his head, which is where you throw forward, when the guy comes back, you're going to hit him. He went through hell. And he told me stories. I'll tell you one quick story about him. Unlike Jackie, this is the way he came to the American League. Bill Beck, a marvelous man on the Indians, and wanted him desperately, and stood up for him and helped him all through that first year. players and 5 coaches and a manager. And exactly 3 people shook hands and married. The others turned it back and looked at the wall. Then he never lost her yet. He went into the bathroom and he changed and they were out on the field already. He came out and they were warming up and you could hear that going a million times when I that door hitting the ball back and forth, back and forth. He stood there outside of the dugout. Nobody would throw him the ball. And just about then, a guy named Joe Gordon, who had been one of my boyhood heroes because before he was the Yankees second baseman, he had been the York Bears second baseman in North America, playing when I was 7, 8 years old. And he was traded at the end of his career to the Indians. So Larry's watching these guys play ball. Larry said to myself, I'm going home. I don't need this guy. And just then, somebody smacks him in the arm. He turns around, and it's Joe Gordon. Hey, rookie, you got a warrior in your uniform. You want all about it. And that was the guy who broke the ice with me. Was his friend during those years. He ran into all kinds of things. They pulled beer cans out of him in the exhibition season down in Florida, in Georgia. He had it tough. He was very tough. And I do remember, somebody had sums it all up. He didn't have too many teammates at the beginning. They weren't too crazy about having a black guy on the team. And now it's his 3rd year, and our kid wants to pitch it for the Yankees, and he throws the ball behind Larry's head. Well, traditionally, usually do that means you want to hit the guy in the head because then he will always pull back. So, Doby gets hit. He drops the bat. He says, I'm not taking this anymore. I don't care what you do. He goes out to the pitcher's mound and he gets Denver. The Yankees all jump on top of him. And then between the back of legs, he looks up and he sees the Indians coming out of the dugout. And there's only one other black guy on the team. And he sees all these white guys running to his rescue. And he said to himself, 3 years from now, for the first time, I have to base. So he had a tough road to go, but boy, we fought to get him in the Hall of Fame. And I remember he didn't get it on the road. The Fighters took that Jimmy expected. Very tough competition. But there's veterans committee. And those guys would not put him in. And I was mad as hell. Now, I knew that Yogi was on there. I knew Yogi was voting for him. And I knew that Monty Earler was voting for him. And there was another vote, but I didn't know who it was. But he never got in at that point. So I wrote a column for him and I said, why am I not surprised you guys keeping him out? You're the same bastards that didn't want him to get to play baseball in the first place. And I got one answer. That's all I mailed it to Detroit. And I got one answer. It was from a guy I love, Ted Williams. He said, listen, asshole. He said, I voted for him. You voted for him. Money voted for him. Now get up your fat ass and go out and get the votes he needs. And I didn't get the votes, but ironically, that year he got in.
And listen, I tell you, there's so much more to his life, and like you said, things.
More complex. Well, I'll tell you another quick story if you have time for it. He was a 3-sport letter man in Patterson, East Side High School. And he was never involved in segregation. We didn't have it. And so now they have it. He was a great football player, the running back. And now they have an undefeated season. There used to be a bowl game in Florida where they would invite a high school from New Jersey to come down and play in this game. They're waiting for the C and the athletic director walks in. He says, guys, we just got an invitation to play in the winter Olympics. And they're all excited. This game's never been out of Patterson. It's a big thing for them. He said, there's one hitch, and you're going to say it. They said, we can come, but Doby can't. And we're not going unless you guys can have us. You vote for Doby. It's up to you. And Larry and I are going to step out of the locker room. And they unanimously voted to stay home.
Wow.
That's a great testimony. You know, he's never been anywhere. He's never done anything in 4 kids. And I guess the great testimony to Larry's character.
Now, no question about it. Listen, Jerry, it was great getting a chance to chat with you. Best of luck on the next book, and hope for many months.
Which is called Watch Newer Giants. You can look at it, you have great boxing. Starts with Sonny beating Floyd, and Tyson fighting Holyfield's here. And you can
Listen, thanks a lot, Jerry. I really appreciate you being part of the program. Hope to talk to you again soon. That was Jerry Izenberg, and I tell you, if you had a chance, and I hope that if you tuned in a little later, that you go back and listen to some of the stuff that Jerry talked about from, the infancy of him starting to cover events on a national level, in the 1940s and the 1950s. And one of the things that I've stood for as I've done my show is I enjoy going back in that time machine. And we look at the media, the way it portrays things now, and everything is about the latest, the current opinion of the thing that just happened. But we look at a history of professional sports that has seen so many different things happen and so many things that are different now that we couldn't imagine them being what they were, 50, 60 years ago. Like the National Football League, the juggernaut that it's become right now. We realized that it was a sport that nobody would show up at the stadiums and watch. I mean, if you listen to the way that Jerry describes the fact that, you're talking about games that would have meant the world to people that were following football today, that nobody was showing up at the stadiums. Nobody had any interest in watching this game that we've seen transform into probably the greatest pastime in the country. And this is a lot coming from me, who obviously loves baseball as much as I do. But, popularity would favor professional football. And, a guy that had a chance to, become friends, be friends of 50 years with Muhammad Ali, be friends for many years with Vince Lombardi. And the fact that Jerry Izenberg is one of two journalists that have covered every single Super Bowl. And you can tell how proud he is to say that. When he says that in his own words, you can tell how proud he is of, his impact in journalism. And if there was one thing that stood out to me in regards to what Jerry was talking about, was that it was never to him about statistics or numbers or anything that we focus on now. It was always about getting the story. And you find somebody that is a journalist and as successful as he was for over 60 years. He focused on the story. And it was an absolute pleasure and an honor to have him on the program. So if you I'm going to listen back to hear some of the things he said and probably pick out some things that I didn't even notice. One of the legends in regards to journalism is Jerry Izenberg. Once again, John Pielli here with you. This is the Passball Show. Be on with you for about another 10 minutes or so. Number, if you want to be involved, I'll give you a couple minutes if anybody does want to call in. The number is 732-364-3598. That's 732-364-3598. Anybody that was following on Periscope, we had a little cut in the feed, so there's actually two segments to this show, which are kind of split in the middle. I got almost about 27 minutes into the Jerry Izenberg interview before it cut out. If you're following me through Facebook Live, you've been with me the whole time, which is good to hear. Obviously, the Passball Show, known for technical issues, one of the main staples of the PBS. Speaking of main staples of the PBS, I got to go over three distinct errors in yesterday's show. We were talking about Lucas Duda signing with the Kansas City Royals. And I did mention Kendrys Morales as if he was still the designated hitter of the Royals. Of course he's not. So I'm knocking myself there, a couple demerits. The next set of demerits come from talking about the second base and third base situation for the Kansas City Royals and me not mentioning Whit Merrifield, who is probably going to be the starting third baseman of the Kansas City Royals. I mentioned Colbert, Ryan Goings, Raul Mondesi Jr., but not the guy who's probably going to be taking Mike Moustakas' place at third base. Now, I'll be a little harder on myself, even though I probably don't have to be here because I did correct myself. But I was mentioning the commissioner of the NBA, and I mentioned David Stern before correcting myself to Adam Silver. So that's three knocks I had on myself for my show from yesterday. We'll see if there's any that I could go back and correct today. But the bottom line is I want to set the record straight. There's so much information that is out there. You speak it. Sometimes you don't speak exactly what it is that you mean. And hey, there's errors in there. I think of the show with, Pardon the Interruption, with Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser. And at the end, the other guy that's there does, errors and omissions. And he goes back and he corrects a couple different things. Well, I do have some research to do, which I'm going to try to figure out exactly who Jerry Izenberg was referencing in regards to the Detroit Tigers pitcher that had the heart attack. The one that came to my head was John Hiller, who pitched in the late 1960s. He ended up having a heart attack, came back, became a pretty good relief pitcher. But apparently there's another one, so I'm pretty interested in looking at this. But, the bottom line is Jerry Izenberg, has, lived a life and a half in regards to everything that he's been able to cover. He was telling me off air that he's looking to write as many as 4 more books that he's looking to add to his legacy and his collection. And he's covered, obviously, boxing and football and baseball. And, it's interesting to see what, the story that he's going to look to tell with Larry Doby. Because if you look at the movie 42 with Jackie Robinson, obviously Jackie Robinson has gotten the honor, prestige, and respect for everything that he had to battle against, becoming the first black player to play in the major leagues in about 50 years or something like that. And in a time where obviously baseball was, it was white baseball. And, the white people couldn't care less about wanting to see an African-American player succeed. And obviously Jackie Robinson took a lot of the brunt of it. He took a lot of the abuse, whether it was verbal or in some cases physical, from players that were, on the opposing teams, and in some cases players in his own locker room. But Larry Doby was essentially the second black player in Major League Baseball, the first in the history of the American League. Like Jerry tells it, he didn't really have anybody on his side. He had a racist manager in Lou Boudreau, not Leo DeRocher, who was a guy who was willing to support Jackie Robinson. May not have been willing to support Jackie Robinson because of his race, but because he felt that Jackie Robinson gave them a better chance to win on the field. And if you hear Leo DeRocher quoted, I don't care if he was black, white, has zebras on his back, has stripes on his back like a zebra. If he can help this team win, he's gonna be on this team. Larry Doby didn't walk into that same support. His manager, like Jerry Izenberg says, and I'm going to take Jerry's word for it, was a racist. Lou Boudreau didn't want a black player on his team. And that didn't resonate, that resonated with exactly what most of the players were going to feel coming into that locker room. Leo DeRocher took his stand. He stood up and said, listen, this guy is going to be on our team. He's not going anywhere. And you know what? If you don't watch your back, there's a bunch of other black players that are going to come in here and take your job too. So at least Jackie Robinson had Leo DeRocher on his side. Of course, he had Branch Rickey on his side. And I would assume that Larry Doby, had the support of Bill Veeck, the owner, but he didn't have the support of the manager or the coaching staff or the players, which made it a little bit tougher for him to get through. And I'm sure there were some times that Larry Doby probably thought about quitting or leaving. And he ended up sticking through, led that team to a World Series championship in 1948 in his first season, which was a step up from what Jackie did to help the Los Angeles Dodgers the year before. Larry Doby's first season, Cleveland Indians won the World Series. And you know what? 70 years have gone by as we go into the 2018 season. And the Cleveland Indians have not won a World Series since. So if you follow the Cleveland Indians, if you're a fan out in the area and this is the team that you root for, hopefully you give Larry Doby the credit he deserves. And I promise you, once Jerry Izenberg releases this next book, I'm going to read it cover to cover. Once again, John Pielli here with you. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Great job by Jerry Izenberg, and definitely hope to get a chance to speak with him again soon. Have him as a guest on the show. I mean, to be on the show with for about 40 minutes or so, which he was, at the age of 87. Which, by the way, this man is 87 years old. We talked about the history that he covered, the fact that he has been part of sports journalism for well over 60 years, 65 years, something like that. he was spitting out stories left and right, and there is probably a lot more that, he could talk about. We didn't get that much of a chance to talk. We talked a little baseball about Larry Doby, a little bit here and there, but man, this is a man that had an impact on the world of sports based off of the way that he told the story. And he didn't need to use numbers or stats. He got to the story. The one thing that stood out to me, I did get a couple minutes for him to talk about Howard Cosell. And, Howard Cosell, in his biography, which was written by Mark Rabowski, obviously a lot of people were cited in regards to comments and opinions of Howard. And Jerry Izenberg was cited many times in that book. And you could tell, he was a guy that, worked with Howard, looked at Howard, basically for what he was. Howard was, a man that, looked at himself as if there was a burden upon him. Started to, came up with, the things that he did, contributed to the sports world and, broadcast and journalism the way he did, but started to believe a lot of the hype about himself. May have at some point fabricated some forms of truth throughout the course of his life. But, obviously Jerry Izenberg looks at Howard Cosell and, he said it himself. He was a, tremendous impact on the world of broadcast journalism. And it's something that I agree to. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the interview with Jerry Izenberg. Like I said, if you tuned in a little late to it, it'll be available on YouTube as well as Periscope and Facebook Live. We'll be back with you tomorrow, 6 to 7 p.m. We're going to be joined by Michael Cohen, the host of Open Mic. And if you get a chance, his Open Mic program today was joined by none other than yours truly. We'll be back with you tomorrow, 6 p.m., right here on Periscope, Facebook Live, and on demand on YouTube. God bless you. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.